Good morning. Is this working? Okay, good. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Lisa Dagger, and I serve on the Adult Ed Committee, and I'm here to get us started. I also serve on the Michigan Avenue Forum Committee. This morning, we're delighted to welcome Joe Grant, who is a community organizer for the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs, to lead our class today. I wanted to also give a shout out to our Michigan Avenue Forum member, Ira Pilchin, who introduced us to the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs, who was our partner in creating the Michigan Avenue Forum this past fall. And this is the third in a three-part series as a follow-up to that event. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs, or JCUA, since 1964, it's brought together the Jewish community to pursue justice in partnership with our neighbors across Chicago and Illinois. Rooted in Jewish values and experience, the JCUA works to ensure that everyone in the region has safety, dignity, and the resources needed to flourish. The JCUA works in close collaboration with directly impacted communities on campaigns to transform unjust systems and bring material improvements to people's lives. They accomplish this by organizing people and resources to advance racial and economic justice, equip leaders with the tools and support they need to shape the future, and to build a world free of anti-Semitism, racism, and hate. Our session again today is led by Joe Grant, who works closely with the JCUA's congregation partners to take powerful collective action rooted in the principles of tzedek, which I believe is charity, or giving, justice, and righteousness, yes, and tikkun olam, which most of you have heard before, a phrase that means roughly to repair or heal the world. And B'Tselem Elohim, which was new to me, and it's finding the image of God in others. Joe joined the JCUA staff in 2021 after 5 years as an active member of the Immigration, Justice Committee, and Training Team. He fell in love with organizing on the campaign to unionize his fellow workers in his graduate program, and subsequently left school to pursue organizing full-time. Joe, when he isn't organizing Jewish people, Joe is probably reading the latest arrival from his Bread and Roses subscription from Pilsen Community Books, or the most recent issue of Jewish Currents. He davens at Michigan, Chicago, and lives in Logan Square. Joe, thanks so much for being with us today, and welcome. And before we get started, I'd like to invite you all to pray with me. Gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity to share stories and to learn how to be better supports to one another during challenging and fraught times. Help us to protect and advocate for one another so that we are your active partners in creating a world where every person can enjoy a life of safety, dignity, and the opportunity to thrive. Guide our conversation and help us to approach one another with curiosity and kindness, even when we disagree. Amen. Thanks again, Joe. Please take it away.
Good morning. Thank you, Lisa, for that powerful prayer and generous introduction. And thanks to the church for having me here. It's great to be back and to see all of you. The first thing I'm going to do, because you all feel so far away and there's 2 empty tables at the front, is invite anyone, please, who's sitting in the 3rd or 4th row to come move up to one of these front 2 tables so we can talk to each other and be together this morning. So my name is Joe. I use he and him pronouns. As Lisa mentioned, my main role at JCUA is working with our synagogue partners in Chicago. I'm also a member of our training team on a sort of yearly cycle of trainings on community organizing, on racial justice. And I was also part of the group at JCUA that originated a full-day training we've been doing for our members for the past 5 years that's called Intersections of Anti-Semitism and White Supremacy. And I'm very excited that now we're starting to bring some of that content in not full day, but smaller, more bite-sized pieces to other audiences, to synagogues, to churches, to our coalition partners, to groups of legislators, and to colleges and universities. So before I dive into the presentation, my hope that today for us is not just learning for learning's sake, although that is something I value, but that this is really going to be practical learning that can guide action and that we can connect with and that you can connect with on a personal level. So I just want to start by inviting all of you to get in a pair with someone at your table and spend a couple minutes on reflecting on this prompt. What is at stake for you or for your community in dismantling anti-Semitism? Okay, I hear some really great conversations happening in this room. I'm going to ask you to wrap up your conversation and come back together, and hope that you will continue keep this prompt in mind for the next hour, and hope that you'll continue talking to each other afterwards as well. And I want to invite. What do we? All right. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Okay, that's one of my favorite things to do as an organizer. So thank you for indulging me. So I want to invite maybe 1 or 2 people just to share something that came up for you in your conversations. Yeah, and also, since I don't know you, please say your name before you share.
My name's Tom. So 2 things. I'm going to call it the obvious: reducing the pain in the victims, the targets of anti-Semitism. That's certainly a benefit. But stepping back a little bit, what we discussed was the increasing society's potential by reducing divisions and bringing people into the fold and having everyone be included and welcomed. We think that allows for greater harnessing of power to increase the potential for society.
I love that. Yeah, I saw a hand at this table. Yes.
I can only speak for 3 of us, the 3 at this end of the table. We had a problem with the question. We thought it was a good question, but now my husband and I, we've been in integrated places with Jewish people for 30 or 40 years. And so I was thinking we do a lot together. There's no distinctions have been made. My best friend is Jewish, and I've read the 3 volumes on the Holocaust, and I've done a lot in terms of that. Also, the other lady said that she went to CLL, and she has 2
Can you say what CLL is for?
Center for Life and Learning.
Okay.
And she has 2 very close Jewish friends. So I guess my question to you would be, and you may cover this later, how do we who are integrated in these communities do this when we're already pretty much integrated? And we've had discussions with our Jewish friends in terms of how they've been treated, what suburbs they could get into, et cetera.
Yeah, thank you. Love a good critique of the question. Appreciate that. Yeah, let's hear one more.
My name is Donna, and my background is Presbyterian, but when I was in my early 30s, I lived in a very Jewish suburb. And on my street, there was 1 Orthodox, 1 Presbyterian, 1 Catholic, and the rest was conservative and liberal in the Jewish faith. My feeling always is God is love. No faith can discriminate against another. But our children were 8 years and younger, and the only families that played with the Orthodox family was the Presbyterian children and the Catholic children. And it was like, I'm not sure it's still today, but I see it as faith is God. God is love. One does not put another one aside or discriminate against. And I would hope that as our faith, that we realize we are all children of God and we can't make that kind of distinction. And when we accept everyone for who they are, work and play with everyone, we will be a better world.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm hearing a couple of themes. One is like, what's the kind of world we want to live in and build together? One is like thinking about the kind of existing relationships that we're in right now. And one is like living out your own values and your commitment to God and faith, which is, yeah. So let's just keep these in mind over the next hour. And also I want to thank Donna for reminding us that, like all people, Jews are not monolithic and not unified, and we often disagree with each other about a lot of things. And I'm here representing JCUA, a Jewish organization, not speaking on behalf of the entire Jewish community. So yeah, important reminder there also. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the role of anti-Semitism in contemporary US politics. But before I dive into that, I did want to give just a brief overview of JCUA's approach to understanding anti-Semitism, because there are there's a couple of two very common misconceptions that I often hear about anti-Semitism, both within and outside the Jewish community. The first one is that anti-Semitism is eternal. It's always been with us. It always will be. You hear people say, I've heard people say, like, it's the oldest form of hatred, and this very kind of fatalistic view that almost described as like an aspect of the natural world. The second is that anti-Semitism is mainly a matter of individual prejudices or attitudes, and that when we're talking about that anti-Semitism is primarily something that resides within individual people. And at JCUA, we think about these things differently. First, I want to emphasize that anti-Semitism at JCUA, the way we think about it is primarily as a political phenomenon. So it's something that political actors use to mobilize their supporters and divide their opponents in order to secure their own power. It's not the same in all times and all places. It's created and it's perpetuated by human beings, and we can dismantle it. Now, what that means for politics today is that anti-Semitic rhetoric is primarily works to the benefit and is a tool of right-wing authoritarian political movements. So I want to say that anyone can express anti-Semitic ideas, and that's never okay to do. And also, right now, the people who are benefiting from spreading anti-Semitism are the ones who are sowing division and fear in order to secure their own power. And in particular, anti-Semitism is at the core of white nationalist and Christian nationalist movements in the United States. And what that means is effectively fighting anti-Semitism requires defeating those movements, defeating the authoritarian right, and effectively building a multiracial democracy. And now I'm going to pause for questions. Go ahead.
I hear that, but the thing that I don't hear is why is the Black community continues to nurture a significant amount of anti-Semitism. And that's, you know, the charters of some of those early organizations speak to that as well. Because
So
I don't understand that. Because the Jewish community has always been so supportive of the Black community. I mean, more so than, you know, we sort of identify.
yeah.
I'm curious.
So this is okay. I'm going to take a minute on this because it's important. So I want to say a couple of things. First, I don't see more anti-Semitism amongst Black Americans than I do anywhere else. And as I said before, anyone can. I mean, these ideas are everywhere, and anyone can spread them. I would also say this, you know, it's. If you look at American history, at the major kind of racial justice struggles in our history, Jews have been on both sides. There were Jewish abolitionists and Jewish slave owners. In the civil rights movement, of course, we love to remember Abraham Joshua Hessel marching with Dr. King in Selma. Okay, if you go back and look at King's letter from Birmingham jail, which is a response to a letter from Birmingham clergy criticizing his movement, one of the people who signed that letter was a rabbi. So these are not moments in our history that I'm proud of. And again, to Donna's point, like, we need to be able to hold all of our communities in their complexity. And so to simply say Jews have always been friends of Black freedom movements, well, it's more complicated than that. Some of us have and others have not. And so I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind. But I also don't think that is like an explanation of anti-Semitism. Okay, we can come back to that later if we have time, because I want to focus in on what. Yeah, Marilyn. Okay.
Well, you got Jesse Jackson, Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan. These are really, significant Black leaders that are blatantly anti-Semitic. Jesse Jackson's tried to cover it up in recent years, but you've got major Black leaders that, and it's just
So-
in addition to the
So
question asked.
here's my challenge for you in response to that question. And this goes to the previous question about your personal stake. And I'm going to frame it this way. Okay, I'm a white Jewish person. I work a lot in the white Jewish community. There's a lot of racism in the white Jewish community. It's my responsibility to address that. It's not my responsibility to go around to white churches telling them how racist they are. So you as a church, look inside your community first. And that's what I really want to push you to focus on. Look inside your communities before you go locating anti-Semitism somewhere else, because it's very easy to do that, and we all like to do it. People in Chicago like to say, "Oh, the South is so racist." So are we. I feel the tension in the room. Okay, I want to name it. Deliberately trying to introduce some productive tension here. And I appreciate the questions and everyone's engagement, and also I want to keep us moving. Okay. And we'll have more time for questions at the end. All right. So a lot of anti-Semitism today might look familiar. And revolves around very old conspiracy theories about Jews being the puppet masters behind the scenes. So this image is on the left is from a campaign video from a Secretary of State candidate in Minnesota who had this video of Soros. George Soros is a Jewish philanthropist whose Open Society foundations fund a lot of like liberal pro-democracy projects. And this candidate released a video showing him as the puppet master manipulating her campaign opponent. The right is from a Trump fundraising email. These are both from last year, 2023, of Soros manipulating Biden. And you also see the People's Republic of China flag in the background there. So you get that very old kind of like combo of anti-Semitism and red baiting and xenophobia. Okay, if you're familiar with the anti-Semitic images that circulated in Nazi Germany, these will look familiar. On the left, this is the cover of a German weekly that was published in 1942. And you have, again, this caricature of the Jew as puppet master manipulating the leaders of the Allied powers. And on the right, this is an image that was printed in Nazi-occupied Serbia in 1941. And then again, you have like the Jewish figure as a puppet master of figures resembling Stalin and Churchill, who were the Germany's enemies at the time. So you really see that it's just like, it's not subtle, it's borrowed wholesale from this previous stuff. Okay, And I showed you the Soros images specifically because conspiracy theories about Soros, these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories have become really central in the white nationalist movement. And it's that movement that I see as the greatest threat to American Jewish safety today. So we're going to spend some time learning about it. And I want to say some of this is heavy and tense. So just like notice how you're feeling, what's happening in your body, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Okay, I want to start just with some definitions and distinguishing between white supremacy and white nationalism. So can I have just a volunteer to read aloud the text on this slide? Yeah.
White supremacy is the system of oppression that empowers white people at the expense of people of color in the United States. It's the water we swim in. White Jews can benefit from and perpetuate this system.
Thank you. So when we talk about white supremacy, we're really talking about a system. We just have an example of this chart of wealth inequality in the US, which is an example of one of the very material manifestations of white supremacist politics, and of what we mean when we talk about it being deeply ingrained in people's lives. All right. Can I have a volunteer to read aloud this slide? Yeah.
White nationalism. White nationalism. White nationalism is a social movement that believes whites are a biologically defined people who should have their own nation. White nationalists want to dismantle democracy in the United States and replace it with a white Christian state.
White nationalists marching in Charlottesville in 2017. So when we're talking about white nationalism, we're talking about an active social movement whose goal is really to remove people of color, Muslims, and Jews from the United States. And this definition is from an article called Skin in the Game by Eric Ward, who for many decades has been researching far-right politics in the US. And it's been an important resource for me and for us. And so we can send it around after. Yeah, good time to pause for questions. Go ahead.
Yeah,
It really helps people who are online.
oh, I see. You're taping. Well, then I better watch what I say. Okay, so this is new definition to me in the last little bit. Maybe I'm naive, and perhaps that's everyone can say it. But I did not know that white nationalism had an objective of Christian state. I may challenge you on that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the universal objective of that endeavor. I think it's just white. I don't think it's necessarily Christian. Or am I wrong?
Well, so yeah, an important question. So when we're talking about far-right movements, we're talking about a lot of different kind of configurations of people and organizations that are not always totally aligned, right? And right now, white nationalist movement and Christian nationalist movement are very close allies and are working together and share a lot of the same goals. So I agree it's important like to be able analytically to make those distinctions, and also they do often travel together. So we're gonna explore that more right now. So I want to show a few clips this is a documentary from Vice News about the rally in Charlottesville in 2017, which shows these white nationalist actors talking about themselves and what they're trying to do in their own terms.
To such behavior, and you gotta.
Sorry, back to the beginning.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
Right, okay. Let me say, these are really hard to watch. They're going to continue to be hard to watch. It's very tense for me. And I've done this many times. So yeah, again, like, do what you need to do to like take care of yourself when you're watching these clips.
I'm trying to make myself more capable of violence. I'm here to spread ideas, talk, in the hopes that somebody more capable will come along and do that. Somebody like Donald Trump who does not give his daughter to a Jew.
So Donald Trump, but like more racist.
A lot more racist than Donald Trump. I don't think that you could feel about race the way I do and watch that Kushner bastard walk around with that beautiful girl, okay?
Nope. One more.
Talk in
Why don't you tell me what you think?
Huh?
What do you do for the Daily Stormer?
I am a feature writer. I do the crypto report, and I'm generally their man on the ground at events.
So what do you hope to get out of today? Like what does it mean to you?
Well, for one thing, it means that we're showing to this parasitic class of anti-white vermin that this is our country. This country was built by our forefathers. It's sustained by us. It's going to remain our country. I believe, as you can see, we are stepping off the internet in a big way. For instance, last night at the Torch Walk, there were hundreds and hundreds of us. People realize they're not atomized individuals. They're part of a larger whole because we have been spreading our memes. We have been organizing on the internet. And so now they're coming out. And now, as you can see today, we greatly outnumbered the anti-white, anti-American filth. And at some point, we will have enough power that we will clear them from the streets forever. That which is degenerate in white countries will be removed.
So you're saying showing up in physical space lets people know that like there are more like them.
We're starting to slowly unveil a little bit of our power level. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Okay. I'm going to invite everyone to take a deep breath. And remind us that it's important for us to confront this because these people are out there, and also that they don't get to define who we are. Yeah.
Hang on just a second. Here you go. Apropos to that, I don't want, if these people are going to take over the government, oh my God. That's what really scares me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. One question?
You're getting your aerobics in.
I don't know exactly how to say this, but what the man said in the back, tend to agree with in terms of I deeply resent these destructive people calling themselves Christian white nationalist. I don't think we should buy into that label. I think we should fight that label. They are not they are not Christian in any sense of the word. And even Christ had the times when he was angry. And I'm really angry that these people, they're nationalists maybe, although that does not represent America either. So I don't think we should refer to them that way, and I think we should do everything we can to tell it like it is. I don't want to say what I think it is because this is a church.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on. This is good. Like, feel the feelings. Like, hold on to that anger and let it motivate you. Okay. Thank you. All right. So I just want to give a summary of like the main components of the ideology of this political movement. Okay. So first, these people believe that whites are a biologically defined people. Second, they believe that black people and other people of color are biologically inferior. And therefore, the achievements of these groups, black people and people of color, present the problem for this ideology. The way they solve this problem is to say that Jews are a race, a demonic and conspiratorial race, many of whom, however, have disguised themselves as whites. And so whatever success people of color have in America, it must be the Jews that are behind it. So again, in white nationalist ideology, Jews are the conspiratorial cabal that are using people of color to undermine the white nation and undermine white power. And this is what I mean when I say anti-Semitism is central to white nationalist politics. It's not incidental, but it's a core part of their view and understanding of the world. Yeah.
Do you think what's going on now in this country is similar to what went on in the 20s and 30s in Germany?
Okay, that's a big question that I'm not gonna try to fully answer, just to say that like I'm very cautious about drawing historical parallels between contexts that are very different. And also, we saw the slides earlier of these images of Soros, which are drawn wholesale from Nazi Germany. So clearly you can make the connections. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your message. Hard as it may be to bear, it's important, and so grace and peace be with you for this, and thank you. Next, my hope is that we as a congregation can listen to people like you and understand the importance of peacemaking on a congregational level as well as an individual level. And I do have one hard question to ask, and I invite you to defer or deflect if you prefer. But I don't understand Stephen Miller. I don't know how to wrap my head around what he does and who he is and the terrible attacks he makes on people.
Yeah.
And I would like to know if he is someone who is discussed, or if there's anyone who's attempting to understand what is going on with Stephen Miller and his acceptance by the very people who reject who he is by his nature.
And if anyone doesn't know, Stephen Miller is a Jewish man who is part of the white nationalist movement, served in the Trump administration, and was the main architect of Trump's anti-immigration policies. Yeah, I mean, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about like his individual psychology. I'm more interested in like defeating the political movement that he's part of, and he's clearly made his own. He's made his own deal with the devil, and he'll have to live with the consequences. That's my answer. Okay. So one of the things that's important here is that white nationalist ideology conceives of Jews as a distinctive race, when in fact the Jewish community is and always has been multiracial and multinational. And so being able to show and acknowledge that Jews can be a cohesive people of many races is really a threat to the logic of white nationalism and white supremacy. Okay, so this is the like less depressing and more joyful slide, and then we'll go back to the really sad ones. Okay, so these are all pictures of Jews. The upper left shows the rabbinic ordination of Rabbi Tamar Manasseh. She's in the center. This was several years ago at Beth Shalom B'nai Zaken Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation, which is on 66th and Kedzie here in Chicago. The next photo is, oh, now I don't have my notes. I think these are Yemeni Jews preparing a dish for a celebration. In the upper right is are Ethiopian Jews. No, the lower left are the Yemeni Jews. Hold on. Let me just look at my notes for a second. Apologies. Sorry. Okay. The upper middle are Moroccan Jews baking mufleta for a celebration called Mamuna. Upper right are Ethiopian Jews. The lower left are Yemeni Jews celebrating Hanukkah. The lower middle is a Passover Seder in China, and then the lower right is a Simchat Torah celebration in Berkeley, California. Okay. So just to illustrate again that Jews live all over the world and look like people all over the world. And hopefully the video will catch up. We was having some ghosts earlier. Okay, now I want to spend a little time focusing specifically on this anti-Semitic conspiracy theory called the Great Replacement Theory, which is animating a lot of white nationalist and white right-wing, politics. And this is the notion that there's a Jewish conspiracy that is trying to replace white people in the United States with black and brown immigrants. So this is a little bit of a long quotation, but I want to ask someone to read this aloud. This is from an essay by Peter Beinart from 2022. Whoops. Yeah, can you help me with that? Thank you.
Like
Sorry.
other white nationalists,
Great,
however,
thanks.
the Buffalo shooter must resolve a contradiction. If black and brown people are inferior, how have they managed to invade and nearly conquer the Western world? Here's where Jews come in. Since Jews are malevolent in a different way, morally degenerate but supremely cunning, they control and manipulate the invaders from the global south. In one montage, the shooter identifies the Jews behind the NAACP because, of course, Black Americans could not possibly run their own civil rights organization. And Jews don't only control other racial and ethnic groups. We're behind the movement for transgender rights, too.
Thank you. So this Great Replacement theory, this ideology, has incited a lot of violent attacks in recent years. So the shooter at the Tree of Life synagogue in 2018 endorsed this ideology. And he targeted that synagogue specifically because they had partnered with the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which is a very old Jewish organization that was founded to aid Jewish migrants arriving in the United States, but since, has since expanded its work to aid migrants also from all over the world, from Syria, from Afghanistan, and from Central and South America. And so for the shooter, Hayes is part of this conspiracy theory, again, bringing immigrants to the US to undermine the white race. Similarly, at the shooting at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019, the attacker there, before this attack, published a manifesto titled The Great Replacement. So this notion was also motivating his violence. At the attack on the Chabad in Poway, California in 2019, we see similar language where this shooter published a manifesto before the attack condemning Jews, quote, for their role in voting for and funding politicians and organizations who use mass immigration to displace the European race. Again, at the shooting at the El Paso Walmart in August of 2019. This shooter wrote, "This attack is a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. I'm simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement." And finally, the shooting that the Peter Beinart article was referencing at a Buffalo grocery store in 2022 wrote that he carried out this attack to directly reduce immigration rates to European lands by intimidating and physically removing the replacers. So you see this ideology inciting violence not only, importantly, not only against Jews, but also against Black people and Latinos in the United States. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how this Great Replacement theory, which originated in far-right white nationalist movements, has moved more and more into mainstream right-wing politics in our country. So Tucker Carlson doesn't have a TV show anymore, but he's still a prominent figure, and he used to show very effectively to bring Great Replacement ideas to a much, much, much broader audience.
I'm laughing because this is one of about 10 stories that I know you've covered where the government shows preference to people who have shown absolute contempt for our customs, our laws, our system itself, and they're being treated better than American citizens. Now, I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true.
So here again, you see Carlson really just borrowing this language directly from white nationalist ideologues and bringing it to his audience of millions of viewers on his television show. And we've seen this taken up as well. I'm going to skip ahead a little
You've got
bit.
to ask yourself as you watch the historic tragedy.
So we've seen this also taken up by other political leaders. So we've had members of Congress endorsing replacement theory. Recently, Elon Musk on Twitter retweeted an anti-Semitic post about the Great Replacement and said, "You have told the actual truth." And all of this stuff has an impact on the world. This was a poll from 2022, which showed that 2/3 of Republicans believe Great Replacement theory. Here we have a member of Congress saying, "We need to be the party of nationalism. I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists." So what I want us to take away from here is that this anti-Semitic ideology, this Great Replacement ideology, is not only a threat to Jews, but it fuels white nationalism, which is a genocidal movement now enthroned in the highest seats of American power, and fighting anti-Semitism cuts off that fuel. Okay, I want to pause now for some questions and reflections and ask, how has this, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to pause for questions and reflections. Yeah, Marilyn and Donna.
Well, I went to Germany a few years ago, and I had never experienced all that stuff and the history and everything. I came home, and I know everybody's going to be aghast, but I wanted to know how it happens. So I actually bought a copy of Mein Kampf, and I've read it a couple of times, actually, because I wanted to know what on earth was going on in this man's mind. And all the slides that you've shown so far are in this book. So when you said before that you really couldn't comment on the parallels between Nazi Germany and what's going on right now, I'm telling you, for the people who have read about the Third Reich and the Mein Kampf, by the way, I recommend the book because it's so, it's frightening.
Yeah, and I should clarify that the right. I think the political context is very different. And yes, you're correct that a lot of the ideology is exactly the same. And you can trace it directly back to 20s and 30s Nazi Germany. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you have the mic, so you, and then back here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel the war in Israel and Gaza has heightened this? Does it play a part?
Okay. Yeah. Important and complicated question. I think I see a lot. There's a lot of different. I see a lot of things different. I see a lot of different things happening right now in the way that Israel and Palestine is impacting U.S. politics in really profound ways. And so one of the things we see is like, one of the things I see is the right very effectively using that as a wedge, which I find very unnerving. I think I also see very savvy, so our opponents are not always fools. Sometimes they're very savvy. And we see, for example, like far right and white nationalists social media accounts who very quickly pivoted and turned themselves into Palestine solidarity, anti-Zionist accounts, and then brought the anti-Semitism back in. So using it as a hook to try to draw people into their worldview. And that's, and again, very politically savvy way. And so I see, I see people getting radicalized into anti-Semitism around this, and I also see a lot of people getting radicalized in a different way into Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism around this issue as well. So I think both, a lot of layers. I'll stay after, we can talk more. Yeah, here.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on scholarship that suggests that while Hitler has blood on his hands of 6 million Jews and others, it actually is Henry Ford, our homegrown hero in terms of American productivity, who was Hitler's inspiration?
Well, I think there's plenty of blame to go around. I don't think pointing out Henry Ford's anti-Semitism in any way diminishes the atrocities of the Nazi Holocaust. Yeah, that feels very straightforward to me. But yeah, it's important to point. I mean, yeah, it's important to notice. Yeah, it's important to notice what the Nazi Party in the 30s borrowed from some Americans, and also that there was a pro-fascist movement here in the 20s and 30s, and there were German sympathizers here. I mean, there was you can find photos of a U.S. rally in Madison Square Garden in the 1930s, full of German sympathizers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in the back.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. I want to ask you a question about the recent resolution in the City Council on ceasefire. So this is one of the things that fuels why are Blacks against us. There's one Jewish voice out of 50 alders in the City Council who asked the City Council not to do the ceasefire resolution, and she was marginalized, pushed aside, and vilified on social media. And there was a lot of anti-Semitism that was pronounced. Actually, it's in the record for the City Hall. And our Black mayor came in and voted for the ceasefire, right? So first of all, did that ever even need to be in the City Council? Why was it there? And it was, I would say, was brought forward a lot by Black alders as well, not just the pro-Palestinian force, progressive force that's in the city council. So this, I'm not Jewish, but I can tell you, this really hurt the Jewish community in Chicago, and you probably know that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I'm not going to speak to the role of city council in addressing international issues because that's kind of a separate question. I think, again, this is a good reminder of what Donna reminded us earlier, which is that the Jewish community is not at all monolithic. And there, in the Chicago Jewish community and even in JCUA, there are people who have lots of different thoughts and feelings and reactions to what is happening in Israel and Palestine right now, and also to this particular ceasefire resolution. And, you know, be transparent with you, it's a very challenging time for JCUA as an organization, because we have a lot of members who supported that resolution. And we also have 5 of the senior rabbis from our 5 of our 8 congregation partners who signed the JUF full-page ad condemning the resolution. So this is an extremely polarizing issue. Speaking for myself, I don't think calling for a ceasefire in Gaza is anti-Semitic. And I read the text of the resolution, and I don't think it's anti-Semitic. And I'm happy to, again, I'm happy to stay after our session and talk more about that as well. Okay, I see we've got 5 minutes left, and so I really want to kind of close out. I'm skipping the Christian Zionism section. We'll have to do that another time. So what I kind of want to close on is what I see happening in American politics right now is really this struggle. 2 choices that face us, 2 political forces. On the one hand, ethno-nationalism and authoritarianism, and on the other hand, multiracial democracy and solidarity. And this is kind of the question that we're facing and the choice that we're facing as a country, which of these roads we're going to go down. And I think the struggle against anti-Semitism and against white nationalism is really, really part of this broader struggle. And I will say for myself in JCUA, we are on the side of multiracial democracy. And I hope that all of you will actively join us there. So in the next 5 minutes, I want to return to the prompt we started with and ask you if anything in the past hour has changed how you think about this question. What is at stake for you or your community in dismantling anti-Semitism? Yeah.
I just want to do a shout out. Very involved in meal ministry. And for years, a synagogue on the north side has provided a wonderful Sunday night supper about every 6 weeks. They bring the food, they bring their youth to serve it, and it's always chili. And the way they do it, members of the church all make chili and they dump it all together, and our guests love it. And it's cheese and onions and then a brown bag to take with you, donuts, and it's just an amazing meal, and they've done it forever and ever. And that to me is working together. But I'm not sure people here are aware of that kind of support, which to me is incredible.
Yeah, for sure. And like continuing to build those kind of intercommunal relationships with Jewish congregations and organizations, so important. Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts and reflections on this? Yeah.
This is a little bit difficult for me to say, but with the war in Israel, I was surprised to see amongst friends, the support for the Palestinian side. Now, I know there's issues on both sides, but I was surprised, uncomfortable. I don't know if they're anti-Semitic, but it surprised me. I was a little bit concerned. And I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there.
Correct.
And you're not aware of it.
Mm,
I'm Catholic,
yeah.
and that was unsettling. It's uncomfortable. So, with some people, if you began a conversation, they would really get vehement about it. I felt, we're not having a friendly conversation now. They're
Yeah.
trying to convince you of their side.
Yeah.
And so, you get to the point where, well, if we're going to get into this heated argument, okay, how do you handle it? Me being Catholic Christian, talking to another Christian who I love and respect, has this very unsettling comments. It puts me in a corner in a way. It's not going to change how I feel, but I feel it puts me in a corner. And to be honest with you, I really don't know how to address it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing. Like, these are difficult conversations to have, and it sounds. Yeah, and they can really test relationships. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And maybe this is where I pass it back to Lisa to say, if you're interested in ongoing learnings around, for example, how to have those conversations, she's the one to talk to about it.
I think I might be. Well, thank you very much, Joe. I think what's at stake is how we choose to live with one another and be as a country. And part of our call is to have those uncomfortable conversations, even when it's difficult with people we love, and seek to understand. And I think that's one way we can move forward. So thanks for today. And the Adult Education Committee has lots of programming. I wish I had looked at the calendar so I knew it was coming up in the fall. Next is Lincoln. And when does that start? Next week. Very good.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Joe, for sharing with us today. I hope we all have gone home with some things to reflect on and some ways that we can support each other better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I just want to say before we go that I recognize this is really challenging material, and I just want to appreciate all of you for being here and sitting with it through some of the very tense and uncomfortable moments. And also, I'm happy to stick around afterwards and talk more for anyone who wants to do that.
Well, let's give Joe a round of applause and thanks. Share our thanks.